Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Claudia Monticelli, the host of this podcast, Let's Talk Soul. Over the years, after having interviewed so many people on so many different topics, I realized that what interested my audience wasn't really the individual topics per se, but was how it impacted them, how it touched their soul. So I'll invite you all to lay back, put your feet up, and if you like what you hear, leave a review, 5-star review. I'd appreciate that. So just enjoy your listening. Now, this week I have a guest who's speaking to us from Israel, David Harold Green. David Green. Say hello, David, to our audience.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure.
It's great to be on with Rome.
Yeah. Let me tell you a little bit about him, and then we'll get down to the nitty gritty. There's just so much to talk about with this man. And, first comes to the top of my head from reading a little bit about you, David. I see that you've worked in the music industry. So you do talk about the United States, I believe, and it comes to mind, what's a nice boy like you doing in Israel now, or have you always lived in Israel?
Okay, you've set me up for a great story. Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, I'll add another country in there. I'm from Canada.
Oh, good.
From Toronto.
Uh-huh.
And I was completely immersed in the music business.
Yeah.
When I was 16 years old.
Oh, okay. So we're talking teens.
Right. As a songwriter, I was already a staff writer for A&M Records, which was a big company at the time. And I was so immersed in the music business that I was very disconnected from myself because I was running so fast after success and success in a very big way. And I went out to LA when I was 16 and met with all these major record companies promoting my music, and I got to rub shoulders with all the top musicians and producers and the A&R departments and record companies.
And this is before you were 20?
Yes.
Wow.
And when I looked at 20 as you're over the hill. If you don't succeed by then, and so when I was 18, I was recording an album in LA, and I was very much involved in the R&B music scene.
Nice. R&B for our international audience is rhythm and blues.
Right. Mainly a black artist. And I came from a strong jazz, sort of more experimental music, but I still wanted to make it big in the pop market without sacrificing my artistic integrity.
Yeah.
So this producer I was working with he won numerous Grammy Awards in the past, and he couldn't accept his award that year, and he asked me if he should win, if I would be able to accept his award on his behalf.
Oh, how exciting.
Yeah, very, very exciting, but a little bit too exciting, because what happened was I got into the limousine he arranged for me, rented a tuxedo, got my special pass, and head down the highway in LA. And I was, someone gave me something to relax me, but it made me fly a little too high.
Oh my God.
And I'm heading down the highway with my feet like above my head.
Oh my God.
And
sorry, but it's hysterical.
And then I wasn't at all religious at the time. And something made me just like pray, God, please don't let him win, because I was so afraid. I just didn't want to go up in front of millions of people watching on television and forget his name, It wasn't a panic attack, but it was the next best thing.
Yeah.
So thank God he did not win.
Oh, thank God.
But because I had a special VIP pass, I was able to go to this big celebration after, where all these rooms of the hotel had different themes. The Count Basie's orchestra in one, and
nice.
And there was the disco room. And then I went into this room where all these artists, like they kept, talking to each other and meeting people and watching videos of the Grammys. And I saw someone who was basically everything I was running after becoming. He was the one of the greatest jazz musicians, and he had a pop hit that year. So he did not sacrifice his artistic integrity, and yet still was very successful in the pop market. That was what I was trying to do. And I looked at my God standing in front of me there, and he looked to me totally depressed.
Oh my God. Okay. Now, when you say your God is this musician, okay.
Right. Yeah. I looked at this person that was like an idol to me, and he just looked like a miserable person. And
I'm starting to feel miserable myself just listening.
I had this shot of awareness, this inner awareness, and this, conscious awareness that I was running way too fast to be something that could become miserable. Right, and I said to myself, you know what? Maybe I should run towards happiness, discover what makes me happy, and then use my music as an expression of that, as opposed to run after this whole vision of success. And I turned around. I went to college, went to music composition school, and then I eventually felt a lot of pull in different directions in my religious identity, and I wanted to resolve that. And I decided to go to Israel, and that's where I became like much more in touch with my real self, and discovered more what it means to believe in God.
Now wait. Now we're going too fast here. Still running. Okay. Now
I got more in touch with myself, and my music flourished. That became the, and then I knew something was right. Because everything started flowing.
You were on a path. You were on the right track.
I was on a path.
Okay, now.
Right.
But now this big key word that emerges in everything you've written to me and is soul. All right, apart from your music, rhythm, blues, and the soul, but we're talking soul here at a different level. And I did get you from Toronto to Israel, and you've drawn the picture, you've designed that for us, and you've explained that. But then, of course, yes, bringing yourself more in touch with your, let's say, your religious side, your spiritual side, that country helped you. That's clear. But you emphasize the soul so much, and you talk about pictures of your soul, all things soul. When I asked you to write topics that you would be interested in talking about, you write the anatomy of the soul. Now, I just have to bring you there right away, if you don't mind.
I'm ready.
Okay. Now, but I'm afraid, because there's so many other things that you can say. So what about if I ask you a question and you can try to answer it?
Yeah, and I'll try to answer it quickly so you can ask more questions.
Yeah, right. Okay. So now we have so you're obviously you've become less materialistic, and your priorities have changed dramatically, and interests have changed. What I'll say it, God's name, brought you to talk about the soul and its anatomy? What made you be drawn by that? I mean, in a good way, I'm asking you, but I'm curious. Right. Yeah.
Well, there's a tremendous amount of writing in Jewish philosophy and Hasidic learning that discusses what the soul is and how what's called the avodas Hashem, the service of God, which is connecting your soul to your inner awareness and to your relationship with God. And the more you learn what the soul is and how it interacts with the body and what the challenges are and what our purpose is in this world, then the more you actually have the opportunity to connect to God, because that soul is a gift from him that we have. It's it's an untouchable jewel. Like, I teach classes on self-esteem that are based on the fact that there's an absolute precious soul that nobody can hurt, nobody can take away from you. And we have actually two souls. We'll get into the anatomy, but one is a divine soul. And if someone digs down deep inside themselves, eventually what they'll find is this incredible jewel that shines. And it's for us to have to remove away distractions in our lives. We have to learn how to turn off our phones.
Yes.
We have to learn how to remove ourselves from the busyness of the world around us, and listen to that voice inside. And if we dig deep enough, eventually we're going to hear something very precious speak to us. But there's another soul, which is called the animal soul. Just like your dog, you look in the eyes of a dog, and you can see there's life there. So how could it not have a soul?
Right.
It does have a soul, but it's an animal soul. We too have an animal soul. And that's why we feel a struggle between our animal side and our divine side. And what we learn how to do is how to let the divine side utilize the animal side, not reject it, not push it away. There's nothing wrong with desires. There's nothing wrong with eating. There's nothing wrong with sexuality. It's all a matter of using it in a way that elevates us as opposed to pull us away. So it's like, analogy is like a horse and a rider. You have the rider is supposed to be in control. But they use the horse in a very positive way to go, let's say, to give someone food.
Right.
They can use that horse as that physical, animalistic, tool in order to do something very holy. But what happens is, if you let the horse lead you, then the rider is going to fall off or get out of control, and the horse will lead you. So to our animal soul, we have to be very careful that it does not become the leader. It's only a tool, and therefore it can be used to enjoy the physical world and elevate the physical world into a spiritual realm.
Okay, now this brings me to that picture. You see, for those of you who have the benefit of the video, you will see David with a background, and in the background there's a hand, and there is a phone, and there's an image on the phone, and at the top, Real You Project. Can you tell us about that?
I certainly can. I spent years teaching people about who they are.
Wait! Don't, you just can't throw that at us here. Teaching people about who they are. That's a loaded, gun there.
Yeah. Well, what happened was I was in Toronto for a number of years after I'd been in Israel, and I started teaching. I became a rabbi. And I started teaching young couples, or singles, sorry. And I had about 300 people who would come out every Sunday night. And I decided that what I wanted to do was teach people based on what they were going through in the room at the time when I was teaching them. So I looked at these singles and I said, you know what? Some of these people are very lonely. Some of these people are suffering from self-esteem. So many of these people don't know how to make choices in life that are critical. And what I found was the overriding issue was that these people do not know what makes them unique as an individual.
Okay, there you go. Hit it
and that began a process of a whole series of classes called Journey to the Real You.
Okay.
And I have an album called Journey to the Real You. And in a book I wrote called A Book About You, it's all teaching them how to discover what's unique about them and how God does not want them to be anybody else but who they are. With all the hangups they have, those are only that's just part of the package of what you're supposed to struggle with in life as part of elevating yourself. So that became my theme. And that's why my website is Real You Project. It's all about getting to know who you are. And the reason why there's a candle on the selfie, because you're looking at yourself, and it says in Proverbs that the soul of man is the candle of God. Which means that the soul resembles a candle in that the soul is attached to a physical body, which is a very strange concept to start with. How could something spiritual connect to physical? But it's always rising, wanting to reconnect to its source. It wants to connect back up to God. Yet God says, no, you have a mission in this world. So I'm going to make you like a flame connected to a wick.
Okay.
that leaves you down here until it's time for you to move on to the next world. And then the candle then goes up and then reunites with its creator. So that candle, if you can even feel that candle inside of you, if you like close your eyes and breathe and get in touch with this life force within you, you feel a spiritual flow going throughout your body, which is a very strange thing. How could a spiritual flow be inside something physical? Why doesn't it just run away? So the anatomy of the soul is a very complex, very in-depth study. And that's what my book called Pictures of Your Soul actually does. It even has illustrations of how the soul interacts with the blood in the body. When the blood is actually the point of contact between the soul and the flesh of a person.
Okay, so wait, let's get the name of the book again, please.
It's called Pictures of Your Soul.
Pictures of Your Soul. Okay.
Right. And the whole idea in that book is like, it's answering all these questions that you think you can't answer.
Okay.
And it's based on a Hasidic masterpiece called Tanya.
Yeah. How do you write that? How do you spell that?
Tanya? Tanya, Tanya.
Okay.
And the Tanya goes through not only the anatomy of the soul, but also how to utilize the soul when we fall to a low level, how we lift ourselves back up, how to get in touch with that soul on an experiential level and an intellectual level. So in that, it describes, for example, that, a person is in Hebrew, which is a divine language. A person is Adam, that like Adam and Eve, right? Adam and Eve. Adam is the first letter of the alphabet, of the Hebrew alphabet, which is Aleph, which stands for God, which is spirituality. And the second part of the word Adam, is dam, which means blood, which means that a person is made out of the spiritual soul, which is godlike,
right,
the divine soul, and the blood, and connected in the blood.
How fantastic. I mean, I'm seeing it as you're saying it. It's absolutely fantastic that you've been able to put into words through all of your cultural preparation and your spiritual preparation, it conceptually presenting something that is so difficult to see, because for many people, I mean, I've even pastors, all kinds of religious clergymen have said, well, I'm talking in the abstract now, I'm hypothesizing,
right.
And I've always had to take a step back and say, but having it mentioned in this way when we are talking about blood is so refreshing. I mean, it is so refreshing that I've just become energized, as if you've given me a shot of something that has given me the energy to do everything now. It's fantastic, David.
Thank you.
Absolutely fantastic.
We're just beginning.
Well, go on. Go on.
Okay. Well, it also says in the Bible at the very beginning, what we call the Torah is the Torah stands for the word instructions for living, Torat Chaim, instructions for living, which is, it's all a manual for life. And it says that God breathed the soul into man. Now, when we make the breathing sound, it makes the letter hey, which is the breathing sound. Now, there are 5 levels of the soul. So when God breathed life through the nostrils of man into the soul, into man, he breathed with the letter hey, which is the 5th letter of the alphabet, the Hebrew alphabet, which represents 5. Right. So he breathed with the sound of the hey, the 5 levels of the soul into man.
Yeah.
That's why 5 has the sound hey, because that's what he breathed into us, the 5 levels of the soul.
Okay.
Now, the lowest level of the soul is called the nephesh. And the nefesh is basically what I was referring to when you close your eyes and you feel within yourself this flow of this life that's just alive within you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the lowest level of the soul, but it's connected to the highest level of the blood. Now, that sounds like a strange expression. Why would there be a higher level of the blood? Well, there's a level of the blood which is almost like a vapor. It's the most abstract, almost metaphysical.
Yeah.
And therefore, it's the bridge between the spiritual and the physical is found within that realm of the blood. And therefore, everything that we go through in our daily lives is affecting the soul and the blood as they intertwine. So the right ventricle of the heart and the left ventricle of the heart are connected to the souls in different ways. So, for example, let's say somebody has an anger problem.
Right.
Okay. Now that's the animal soul taking a hold of the person.
Yeah.
And the person loses control and starts to scream at the family at the table, right?
You mean that soul of mine who was arguing with my husband this afternoon?
That's the animal soul arguing. Now, let's say this person has a hard time with anger.
Yes.
So they decide, you know what? I have a tool to control my anger. Now, by the way, when a person becomes angry, their blood flows to their face.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You can see anger on the face because the blood. Which is connected to the animal soul as well, pumps blood to the brain, and you're seeing that anger showing through. So now if I want to control my anger, what I have is a very powerful tool. What I have is something called an anger robe. What's an anger robe? An anger robe goes like this. I am getting very angry inside. I haven't shown it to anyone else, but I know myself that I'm going to lose control unless I do something to stop myself. And if I just tell myself to stop myself, I'm not going to be able to do it. I've failed too many times at this. So what I'm going to do is I have an anger robe upstairs in my room. So I'm going to get up from the dining room table. I'm going to go out. I'm going to walk slowly up the stairs. I'm going to walk into my room. I'm going to open the closet, and I'm going to take out my anger robe. And I put it on and tie the belt and come back down to the table. Okay. And by the time I come back down to the table,
there's no more anger.
All that animal soul has dropped, and then I'm a person who's in control. Right? So learning the patterns of the animal soul enables us to gain control so that the divine soul is the one who's running the show as opposed to the animal soul. And that's a simple example with anger, but it applies to all kinds of desires that are below our dignity, overeating, knowing how to protect yourself from falling into places that are not where you want to go.
And this, when I'm listening to you and it chimes in, the words that you wrote to me was that a big part of knowing who you are is knowing what you are. And this is hence the anatomy of the soul. And knowing that will make you orient in a space that previously was unknown. Go on. I'm sorry. I just have to comment because I was trying to make,
Right. Well, what happens is the more you know what you are, the more you develop a sense of control to be able to live with that awareness.
Yeah. Awareness.
And so what I do with my book, Pictures of Your Soul, is I start with the expectation that people know nothing. And I take a person through a walk through the forest. And you let them just notice that they're alive, moving away from the busyness of the world around them, and start asking, well, what is that thing that is inside you that is alive? And gradually, as I move through the book, I answer a lot of questions about like how does the soul stay within a physical body?
Yeah.
Where is the soul? What's the anatomy of the soul?
Yeah.
How do I grow with my souls? And what happens is the reading of the book is very much a meditative process, because if you just say soul, then people don't know what you're talking about.
Right. Sure.
Even if you feel that you're alive, it doesn't mean that you are in touch with your soul in a deep way. So by reading the book, you become familiar with that inner self to a point where now you can start having a relationship with that inner self. Because you're starting to get to know, oh, wow, look what happens when I feel inspired. The right ventricle of the heart is communicating to the brain, and the brain is sending back down signals to the rest of the body, enlightening it with a sense of life and vigor. And when the animal soul takes over, wow, look what it does to me. And I try to teach people to become aware of the soul on a much deeper and more refined level, so that they can walk away with that awareness even when they are around all kinds of busyness. When they go to the office and they talk to people, are they talking to these people with that awareness of who they are and what they are? If they develop that enough while they're on their own, then when they place themselves back into an environment that's not so conducive of spirituality, they can hold themselves up and remember who they are, and they become a transformed person. Now I can talk to a person and I can say, I'm not an animal. I'm an elevated being. I'm a person with a divine soul. I have no right to have a lack of self-esteem, because I've been created in the image of God, which is this divine soul that is so elevated, and therefore it doesn't breed arrogance. It just breeds dignity. And
I'm
therefore,
looking through as you're speaking, I'm looking through your book, and it's full of beautiful photography. It's just fabulous to leaf through, and it's I won't say more, but it's very much worth a read, and not only one read, for people who are not who don't come from the Jewish culture and from this spiritual background. But I'm sorry that I interrupted you, but I'm looking here, and there's divided into so many parts. And the first is the big picture. Now, and under the big picture, where is my soul? What do you mean by the big picture?
Well, that's sort of a play on words. The picture that's there is actually a very wide shot of Jerusalem overlooking the Temple Mount and the Western Wall.
Yes.
So I use that visually. But before I go on with that, what I did was I did a number of illustrations in the book to show how the body and the soul work together.
Yes.
But then I felt I have a friend who's a photographer who lives in the old city of Jerusalem, who has spent years, hours a day, taking pictures of people who are on fire in prayer. And if you look in the eyes of somebody who is on fire in prayer, it's like the eyes are the windows of the soul.
Yeah, when you say on fire, that obviously is a metaphor for the actual, what do people see when you say they're on fire in prayer?
They're incredibly passionate. They're showing their tremendous love of God,
right?
That it completely overtakes their body, where there's this elevated sense. And if you look in the eyes of these people in the book, you are actually seeing their soul through the positions that their prayer takes them to. So I decided to use the pictures as a way. Besides the illustrations, it's another way to see the soul through the people who are very, very holy.
And it's very effective. It's so very effective.
Thank you. And so the big picture is starting first with basic questions.
Okay. Yeah.
And then what I do is then I zoom in to
Yeah.
more specific and more specific and more complex and more elevated concepts as I move through the book. So the idea is to take people from any background. I've been on like already 20 podcasts and a bunch more to do. And many of the people are Christians, and they're fascinated by what Jewish tradition has to offer in terms of explaining the anatomy of the soul. This comes from Kabbalistic sources. And so that's not really something that has been adopted by other religions. So it's a tremendous resource for people to understand what the soul is and how the soul responds with the world around it, and how to maximize our relationship with our inner selves and express that.
When was it published, the book?
It was just published about 5 months ago.
Oh, okay. So it's 2022. All right.
Yeah.
22. Is this your first book?
No, this is my second book. My first book is a book about you. That's the one about individuality and and that's one that goes together with my album Journey to the Real You. And that and throughout that book you have the lyrics to my songs, followed by a QR code. And what you can do is they just scan it and it'll play the song that you're reading the lyrics to. I have that in my new book as well, as Pictures of Your Soul, because my second album is called Empty Spaces, which is based on a spiritual meditation that goes from the nephesh level, which I was describing before, the lowest level of the soul, into the second level of the soul, which is called ruach, where you actually you meditate going through the whole sort of mindfulness of the nephesh level, but then you step into a realm which is empty, and that emptiness is much more it's an infinite space that you have to sort of surrender to. And that surrendering into an infinite space is you're in touch with what's called the ruach level of the soul. And that's a very spiritual place. If a person can elevate themselves and live within the realm of ruach, then they if you can hold on to that while you're engaging with other people, then you would be able to see almost like a glow from a person who has that certain shine of spiritual elevation. By the fact that they're living within the ruach level of the soul.
And I take it, I mean, this last book was, I mean, it's so important, so interesting, so great, that I even hate to ask, because people just, get out books as if they were, just put pen to paper and start writing. And so since the phenomenon of self-publishing has been so important and popular now, you really get so many types of things out there. And so it's, I'm embarrassed to even say to you, are you thinking of another book?
Yes, I am thinking of another book.
Okay.
And in my first book, I had a chapter called Spiritual Self-Defense. And so I'm thinking of writing another book called Spiritual Self-Defense.
Good.
And I'll come back on your...
What would that be about?
What that's about is... Have you ever learned martial arts? For example, in karate, what you do is you learn how to punch first, okay? And you practice punch back, and the instructor makes sure that you twist your arm the right way, your wrist moves with the punch, and you learn to punch over and over again. And you may go to a karate class, and for the first 2 classes, all you're doing is punching. And you're wondering, like, when am I ever going to learn how to fight? I want to know how to fight. I don't want to just know how to punch. And then they teach you how to block. And then you have to practice blocking. And then you have to learn to punch followed by a block. And then you do punch, block, kick. You're
making me think of Karate Kid.
Exactly.
Clean it and roll.
Karate. That is exactly the principle that I'm coming to in that just like in Karate Kid, he had to learn to do things over and over again to develop the skill to a point where it becomes a reflex. So that if I'm in a dark alley and someone's chasing after me, and I don't start thinking, well, maybe I should do this or that. You have no time. But you have developed those modules of responding, right, reflexing on the image or of something coming towards you, automatically makes you do a block, punch, kick. It's there for you. So similarly, the battle between the divine soul and the animal soul, the divine soul can learn the language of the animal soul and learn moves, knowing, for example, I'll use an example that's much simpler, but like if a person's on a diet and they live a few blocks away from their doctor's office, so they have an appointment, there's two routes they can take. They can take a short route, which has an ice cream store on that route, or they can take a longer route that doesn't have an ice cream store. So the first level of self-control is, why tempt myself by the ice cream store? Walk a little longer. I'll lose a little more weight. And I'll get to the doctor and everything will be fine. Nope. I got to go. I'm running late. I'm going to go by the ice cream store, the shorter route.
So then what happens ice cream store. Where is that?
then you pass by the ice cream store, and for some reason you just have to use the bathroom at that point. So you go in the ice cream store to use the bathroom, not to get ice cream, just to go to the bathroom.
Sure.
And then if you are a somewhat conscience-oriented person, you feel bad to use the bathroom
without buying anything,
without buying something, because that's meant for the customers, not for somebody going to the doctor. So therefore you got to buy something. So you could buy yourself a Diet Coke, but oh my gosh, that Jamocha almond fudge ice cream looks so good. I'm gonna have it and start my diet tomorrow. So there's another level of self-defense, which is while I'm outside that ice cream store, know that there's going to be a punch and a kick from that store trying to get me in there. And I have to be prepared to block it and move forward. And go to the doctors. So there's a lot of voices that the animal soul conjures up at a time of desire. And us becoming familiar with those voices and learning how to respond to those voices develops a tremendously refined person. And that's really what the book is about.
Wow. I mean, we could talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, but I did get a peek into the future, which I'm happy about. And so, I mean, I have to say goodbye. I have to close this interview. I do. But I do hope to have you back on, David. Surely even before your next project, but please. But do keep in touch. I would love to talk to you again, because we've just scratched the surface, really, and it's been so interesting, especially for me, the part about the blood. I mean, that just is hit home. Well, that's just what I
read the book. And I highly recommend people to visit realuproject.com.
realuproject.com.
And there is my music. There's music videos. There's an online course which is free that you can go through, Journey to the Real You process. And there's links to buy the book. There's links to you can even give me a code that you want for people to get 30% off the book. What's your show is called what again?
Multiple Voices.
Okay, so I'll make the code Voices.
Okay.
And if they put that as the coupon, they'll get 30% off the book.
Okay.
Or just go to Amazon and get it there if they want.
Okay, Voices. I'll have to write that down as soon as we end the interview. I'll write that down. Voices, capital letters. Is that okay?
No, actually, make it all small, because I don't know if it's case sensitive or not.
Okay, small. Voices. All right. Thank you so much for your time and this wonderful, refreshing conversation. And we'll talk again, David. We'll talk again.
My pleasure, and enjoy the game.
Bye-bye. The game. He's talking about the World Cup soccer game, football game.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.